What's happening out there, you self-improvement lovers? Coach Daryl Johnson here. Talking a little bit today about some science, some class structure, common questions we get with the difference between regular classes and seminars and you know boot camps and things of that nature. So one of the questions I get a lot is in our academy, the home academies, we usually do classes for about 45 minutes, maybe an hour outside. And some people complain like, oh, I want to go longer, and why is it so short? And my old school, we trained for an hour and a half, and keep in mind that there's a couple things at play here. One is I've been teaching martial arts professionally for 30 years now, and I've been teaching in professional academies for longer than that. And I've done everything from short classes to marathon classes, and I will tell you a couple of things that are important. One is the science over the last few decades has proven that people learn material in relatively short chunks, 15, 20-minute blocks. And if it also depends on what your goal in the class is. If your goal is to provide material in a way people are going to absorb and retain it, and that's your main objective, then you're going to want to do it in short chunks and not overwhelm the brain. And that is just science has proven over and over again. Now, if your goal is to get a long, hard workout in and try to cram as much stuff as possible, that's a different objective. Let me give you an example. Excuse me. When I was a kid, I liked candy. That's probably one of the reasons I was overweight. Candy and soda. Ooh, yummy. But I would get the money for candy, and I would go to the store, and I would literally take every single candy bar, every package, and I would look at the back and see how many ounces there were, and do the math, and okay, I want the biggest bang for the buck. And what I found is, at least in the store that was by my house, is they had these really long candy bars. They were chocolate covered and not a taffy, but called a Charleston. I think it's called a Charleston chew, something like that. I don't see them anymore, but I don't really buy a lot of candy. Anyway, that was the most candy I could get for whatever the money I had was, short of the penny and nickel candies and stuff. So my decision-making process was completely based on a scarcity mindset of okay, well, I only have this much money. I want to get the most amount of candy possible. It wasn't about the quality. For example, I think one of my favorite candies would be like Reese's peanut butter cups. As sugar bomb pancreatic assaults go, that's one of my favorites. But they were not as cost effective, so I rarely bought them because I had so much money. I wanted to get that back to some bang for the buck. And what I find in my time in martial arts is a lot of people do their shopping this way. They want. I've had parents come to me and complain that our kids' classes weren't an hour and a half long. And if you're an instructor of children, whether it's martial arts or anything else, and you have kids, let's say they're under the age of 9, and you're expecting them to focus on one topic for an hour to an hour and a half, you are probably going to be very disappointed. Now, for the schools who do these long marathon sessions for kids and adults, here's what usually happens. What usually happens is they're lower end schools. I don't mean in a bad way. I mean they're usually hobbyists or they're not professional or maybe they are. And now there's a difference between a class that does technique for 30 or 40 minutes and then does freestyle, like sparring or grappling for another 30, 40. That's different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual learning material. Let's make that distinction. But what happens with these long marathon classes is you tend to weed out people who have busy lives, and they have kids, and they want to learn some self-defense, but they aren't a disciple. They haven't committed their life to the art. They just want to learn some stuff, have a good workout, engage in a social activity that's positive. And when you make these classes where you have to do an hour and a half class, you got travel time, you're taking a 2 to 3 hour chunk of their day for one class, one training session. Some people will definitely be on board with that. They will be like, yeah, this is great. For $200 a month, I can do these classes and they're 2 hours long, and that's fantastic. The average person who does martial arts training as an adult isn't likely to be down for that. And again, I've experimented with classes from 25 minutes long to 90 minutes long. And by far, the most popular classes are the ones that are under an hour total. Again, it doesn't count if you're doing sparring after class or you're doing grappling after class. That's a little bit different. Or sometimes we do our training classes, then we'll do a fitness class that follows it. So it's just, workout. It's not necessarily high level technical instruction. Some of our students will just continue in that. It's a little bit different. So I'm talking about learning material. And what we found through 30 plus years of experience is that having one or two learning segments in a class with then doing applicable drills to reinforce those segments creates the best retention of material and allows people with relatively busy lives, family lives, balancing college, whatever it is they're doing, to participate and benefit. If you set your academy up so that it only appeals to the hardcores, what you'll end up with is a dozen people who are committed and they'll never quit, and they'll train in the snow, in their pajamas, which is some benefit to that. But my point being is, your typical folks who just want to learn some self-defense are not going to be as hip on that. Same kind of thing applies to like rank testing. If you make your white and yellow belt rank testings 2 hours long with tons of high intensity, sparring and grappling, and you're not going to have people who are going to be excited about testing at that level. There's a time and a place for that level of stuff. So for us, our beginner level classes, we don't go an hour and a half of training and expect people to be excited about that. What we do is we have sparring classes, we do grappling classes, we do special classes. Like, hey, someone wants to come, they want to do just some grappling skills for an hour and a half class. We do that separately. We also do workshops and seminars. Let me take the same premise and move it over to the seminar format. Very often I get requests to teach, like, say, women's self-defense workshops, or I have people who have no experience or very little experience, and they want to learn self-defense. And this is my personal experience and opinion. So some people have a different take on this. If I'm going to take a group of people, let's say they're all females, and teach them self-defense in one shot, the expectation that a 2 or 3 hour or 4 hour workshop is going to result in a lot of retention and technique is pretty far-fetched. What my main goal is when I do a one-shot deal with self-defense, whether it's women or men or whatever it is to try to give them almost like a sampling of what they can do, understand some principles. But one of the most important things I want people to get from workshops that I do this is understanding the importance of awareness. And everybody says, oh yeah, be aware, situational awareness. What most people fail to realize is how easy a predator whose mission is to assault, attack, rob, rape, kill you, if they are committed to it, how easy it is for them to accomplish their mission if you are not prepared. And by prepared, I don't mean 27 ways to get out of a headlock. It means you don't put yourself in a situation where you are isolated, where you are, your space is encumbered, where you are at a huge tactical disadvantage. So when people do self-defense training, and then they start realizing how difficult it can be if somebody grabs you or attacks you or tackles you, and they realize, wow, I don't really know, I'm not prepared for this. I don't have the skill set to defend this kind of assault. Well, my hope is that you would realize that how much better you would be is that if you can avoid having to be in the hands-on position in the first place, if you can position yourself so you're not having to engage in hostile behavior with an aggressor, you're going to be far ahead of the curve. Now, it's not always possible. Sometimes somebody has set their sights on you. If you have a stalker, a personal vendetta, maybe somebody feels you were inappropriate with their wife or whatever the case might be. That's a case where the violence may be imposed upon you, even if you do have great awareness of your surroundings. So my point being is, people will often shop self-defense training, and really anything else too, not just self-defense, music lessons or art lessons, and they're like, I want the most bang for my buck. I want to squeeze as much training as I can in a paid slot without taking into account what is your main goal. Is your main goal to just get as much just work out as much as you can, or is it maximum retention of technical skill? For me, as an instructor of a professional academy, I've been doing it a long time, is I want students to come in, I want them to get a workout, but that's not my main goal for self-defense training. I want them to learn the actual skills and application and have a chance to, train them in different environments, but I want them to retain that information. And when you just dump, if I do a class and I teach 7 different self-defense techniques, the chance of the students remembering those is really, really small. Will there be some outliers? Absolutely. As with any kind of discipline, you're going to have people who are naturally gifted. I'm sure we all know somebody who can pick up an instrument and play a song with little to no training, whereas most people have to like train and learn the music theory and understand how to read the notes and the chords and whatever. In martial arts, I've had students who I'll show them something one time and they are excellent at it. That's the outliers. That's not the average population. Again, when I used to train MMA fighters, I could obviously move a lot faster because these are people who are committed to training. They're ready for the rigors. They're hungry. If they're going to be competing, the price of failure is very high. So they were really they would outperform my average students because the stakes were higher. So that's not a fair comparison, and a lot of people make this mistake. Anyway, so again, a common question we get when people call on the phone, like, hey, when are your classes? How long are they? And oftentimes I get someone say, well, I did Hu Flung Dung before, and we trained for 2 hours every, Monday and Wednesday. I'm like, well, that's cool. I mean, so I asked them, well, what is your goal? Are you looking to retain material, or do you just want more workout? It's an important distinction. And I'm telling you, the science supports this small block theory. My experience supports the small block theory. And most people don't have, or at least if they don't have or are not willing to sacrifice large chunks of their personal and family time to learn martial arts or self-defense or combat sports or whatever the case might be. There are people who will, but the average person who's maybe got a wife or husband and has kids, or a full-time job, or maybe 2 jobs, or they volunteer in the community, or they have church, whatever it is, they're probably not going to be hip to committing 2.5 to 3 hours of time every time they want to train. So anyway, I hope that you find that useful. That's our philosophy. I do a lot of workshops and seminars where they're longer. And again, some of it's just to expose people to different aspects. Sometimes we'll do things for people who have training and they want to dive deep onto a subject. It just depends on the goal of the training. When you train, this is an important distinction. It's a little bit of a tangent. Training indicates that there's an outcome desired. Otherwise, you're just exercising. You're just working out, which is great. But training means there's a start, there's a process, and there's some kind of completion. At the end of training, there should be an expected outcome. Are you able to, what is that outcome? Do you want to be able to handle X amount of threats? Do you want to be able to bench press X amount of weight? Do you want to be able to do X amount of push-ups? Do you want to be able to run X amount of miles? So training indicates an objective is desired. Something at the end of the training, or something, there's benchmarks and progress checks that tell you that you're progressing towards something. Otherwise, you're just exercising, which is cool. Exercise is important. All right, so hope that find that useful, guys. That's some of the philosophy we have as a professional academy, and then when I teach seminars and workshops and I train other instructors, that's our gig. So hope you guys find it useful, and I'll talk to you soon.